Magic Conj, will I ever get to meet Tom Kenny?
Maybe someday.
Oh, so you're saying there's a chance. Okay. Should I tell fans of the show how they can support us?
Yes.
Goofy Goobers, supporting the show is shockingly easier than catching a blue jellyfish. Right from our anchor page, anchor.fm/SpongePod, you can find links to all of our social media and a support button if you happen to have a few extra clams. Also follow us on twitch.tv/SpongeBobPodcast, where it's not only the official home to our sister show, Video Bob Gamepants, it's also where I stream live drawings of various Nickelodeon characters and host the opportunity for commissions and giveaways. Lastly, the official merchandise store is now open at redbubble.com/people/SpongePod, where various designs will be uploaded inspired by our show, including our official logo, which is now available on a multitude of products like t-shirts, stickers, duvet covers, and even a shower curtain. This is a podcast by a fan, for fans, and will always be fan-driven. Any way you see fit on supporting our show is much appreciated. Thank you, and enjoy. Ahoy, mateys, and welcome to another episode of I'm Ready, a SpongeBob SquareCast. My name is Captain Eric, and we have finished our sail through the second season of SpongeBob SquarePants. But before we get to the third season, we're stopping off on the island of Video Bob Gamepants to check out another SpongeBob video game. This one was released after the second season had already finished up. The last episode of the second season, which was completely aired out of its production order, but the final episode that I can see aired on October 19th, 2001, the episode of Procrastination and I'm with Stupid. So then this new video game that we're looking at is actually the very first SpongeBob SquarePants console video game for the PlayStation 1 and eventually the Gameboy Advance, SpongeBob SquarePants SuperSponge, the fourth video game in the Video Bob Gamepants library, the fourth video game to feature our lovable square friend. SuperSponge is a pretty decent platformer that honestly for its entire life I've overlooked up until this most recent playthrough. Overlooked in the sense that there were just better SpongeBob games out there. There is a point to this game that, although it feels like every other kind of licensed video game of the time, maybe a little bit on the cheap end, maybe a little rushed to reach to market for, like the shopping season, there is although that feeling is there for this game, there is a level of effort with the IP that I do think needs to be acknowledged and honestly respected a bit more in the SpongeBob SquarePants video game pantheon, because there's so many video games and there's so many of them that I feel like underperform with the IP that for a game like this should just be solidly remembered, especially that it's an early entry in SpongeBob's lifespan and being used as a video game property. I mean, this is really only the third SpongeBob SquarePants video game released, although he appeared in Nicktoons Racing. That's just an appearance. Then followed Legend of the Lost Spatula and the Game Boy Color, followed by Operation Krabby Patty on the PC, then following SuperSponge. All three of those released in the year 2001. Let's keep that in perspective for a second. Even though we may go through a lot of episodes in between these video games, this is in 1 year span that SpongeBob has made it from his very first video game all the way to his very first console video game. He already has a PC video game out. The SpongeBob SquarePants marketing is in full effect. Here we are 2 years after his initial release. This is just going to be the start of something that's going to keep getting bigger and bigger. And we're going to be getting into a lot of video games. Eventually, every video game we get into, they're just going to get bigger and bigger, and they're also, the space in between games is going to become smaller and smaller. So although I have not been able to live stream, I did for Legend of the Lost Spatula, and I did for Nicktoons Racing, but as we continue, I think YouTube is mainly going to be our just number one home for all the content that I create, and honestly going to be the main focus point of any of the video game content I make. So I'm going to probably at some point before the next video game reshoot all of the footage of Nicktoons Racing, Legend of the Lost Spatula, just so we can get some back catalog of some footage. Long plays are very popular. I would love to commentate over those long plays. And I had a blast getting through SuperSponge. Just to keep things transparent, all of the games that I have played thus far, I do own, even if I have used emulation for ease of access. I'm looking at my copy of Legend of the Lost Spatula. I have a Game Boy or a DS I can plug it into, but it's just easier to use an emulator. I'm going to make sure that any game that I emulate for this series is going to be a game that I own and can show off and say, hey, look, I own this game. I've played it. I've supported, supported whoever. Anyway, SuperSponge on the PS1, I think I've said this earlier. It was a game I overlooked for a while simply because when it was released, I didn't have a PlayStation 1 at my disposal. I grew up with a Sega Genesis, then had a Nintendo 64, and then had a Nintendo GameCube. I didn't get into the PlayStation brand until I started becoming a bit of a collector. And hey, I want to build collections of games I like and different consoles, and then started kind of diving into the PlayStation library. So by the time that I owned a copy of SuperSponge, it was out of that moment of nostalgia. It wasn't a game that I had better SpongeBob games at my disposal, so I would play this for a little bit. Yeah, okay, it was all right. It was a small licensed platformer on the PS1, decent graphics. Kind of just shoved it to the side, and not that it was shoved to the side out of disrespect in any way, shape, or form. It was just shoved to the side because, as I said, there was better SpongeBob games out there, so it wasn't necessarily as a negative. But now, having sat and played through the entire game yet again, I did it once before when it first, when I first got my hands on this, the smaller PS1, the second release, the name PS1. I was able to get that and the attachable screen to it that fits all perfectly together, and the screen folds down. So when I was able to get this PS1 when I was like 16, 17 and was able to play through SuperSponge, I played it through on that tiny screen on my desk, about an hour and a half, 2 hours, just kind of a short run through. And let me tell you, playing it from that to then playing it on the PC on an emulator on a big screen, much different experience. I found a new level of appreciation for the presentation of the game. It still feels cheap. It still feels rushed, but the effort put in, the intro alone shows off a lot of footage from the second season's episodes that we were just going over. It was actually very appropriate to kind of end with this because they used so much from season 2. But also, this isn't just a game that features some text and some, when I'm saying like the word cheap, when you think cheap, it would be something where it's just text. They actually got the voice actors for the cartoon to come in and voice new lines for the video game. Most of the voice actors from the show are present here and accounted for, including Tim Conway and Ernest Borgnine as Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. The whole Ernest Borgnine part, though, has to be noted because this is, I believe, one of only 3 SpongeBob SquarePants video games that he has appeared in as Mermaid Man. The other games are Truth or Square and Boating Bash, which I can't believe they got Ernest Borgnine for Boating Bash. That's great. But yeah, so think about that. This is, when you hear Tim Conway, now Ernest Borgnine's Mermaid Man is not on the same speaking role level as Tim Conway's Barnacle Boy, but Tim Conway is all around this as Barnacle Boy. He has so many speaking lines with SpongeBob. We get Patrick, we get Squidward, we get Sandy. Mr. Krabs, as usual, is not voiced by Clancy Brown, although the Mr. Krabs they have here is not too bad. I've definitely heard worse Mr. Krabs impressions in video games than the one that we have here, and his role is quite minimal, honestly. And I think they knew, like, hey, let's feature more of the voices that we have, and we'll have Mr. Krabs there. But what's really nice about this game, and I did write some notes during the first part of my playthrough, just some quick notes that I have here. A joyful presentation in menus. I gotta say, the menus, going through them now, the colors pop. The music in this game throughout, even though there might be some tracks that when you're playing don't feel like SpongeBob music, the music throughout is fantastic. The SuperSponge soundtrack is a very they know exactly where you're supposed to be. And like I said, there's sometimes there's pieces of music that, I don't know, when I was playing, if I decided to, if I needed to pause the menu, the music would keep playing, not loop it, it would just play without any of the sound effects, and I'd be able to listen to it for a second. And there would definitely be some tracks there that I'd go, this just doesn't feel like SpongeBob. But then I would look at the level and the design, and it would go, all right, yeah, this, okay, like, I get it. They did a great job. Character models are on point for a 32-bit game. A lot of this is 2D. The only real 3D, some of the only other game I can kind of think of that this reminds me of is Toomba on the PS1. SpongeBob's model has more texture to him to show a bit of like a pseudo 3D effect, and he has some wonderful facial movements, especially when he's teetering on a ledge and whatnot. There are some platforms that are jutted from the wall. Like, there's certain trees that if you're looking at the tree, it looks like a 2D image, but at certain angles you can see that you can jump on the branches, that there's actual platforms you can jump on them. So it's one of those kind of games. The voice acting has been impressive. Gary, though, it sounds like he's been smoking a little bit too much. I don't know, the meow sound effect. Even I checked on the PS1 version on that PS1 I have, and it sounds just a bit scratchy there. I'm a little bit worried for him. I mentioned how much Tim Conway was just impressing me with his Barnacle Boy here. The first level is a great SpongeBob, like a great starting level for a SpongeBob game. But what's different is that pretty much in every other SpongeBob game that you can think of, you probably would want to avoid the jellyfish. It feels like in every other SpongeBob game, jellyfish are an enemy that you should watch out for. But in SuperSponge, you got to retrain yourself, because the jellyfish are at no point harmful unless there's a specific, character that's, you'll be told will harm you. I'm talking about mother jellyfish. But yeah, none of the jellyfish you see behind you swimming around will harm you in any way, shape, or form. But they're actually weapons that you can pick up with the jellyfish net, and then projectile launch at enemies with I would say very poor range. But that was an opinion I had really at the beginning of the game, until I really just got used to the weapon, and over the course of the game, it just became like second nature on how to use it, when to use it. So gotta say, it was an early complaint, but I moved through with flying colors. It's not so every level has a different weapon, or there are different weapons you can find in levels that will help you out, but sometimes there's levels like in Sandy's Tree Dome where you're not really given a weapon. You're given a tool, which is, of course, the SpongeBob's helmet that helps him breathe, in Sandy's air. That is a whole different mechanic for that level specifically. Otherwise, at times you can find a fishing net. At times you can find your reef blower. At times you can find your karate chop fist hand to be able to karate chop enemies. There are different weapons that, will help you make new platforms, like the bubble wand. But what's great is as I was going through the game, I found that there were times that it was very obvious when you would need to use a weapon or one of these tools to assist you to move on to the next part of the level. But there were other times where they would give you one of these tools, and then you would just, if you just knew how to use it in the right way, you wouldn't need any, like, if you would come across other tools, it was just like, I don't need the karate chop hand. I have the bubble wand. I'm just going to make platforms and get out of the way of all these enemies. There were some levels that were very inviting to let you kind of play how you wanted. And there were other parts that you would just hit the wall and, hey, you're going to have to pick up the reef blower. The reef blower, for example, would make your movement slower, but you would be able to shoot out shells that you could pick, like these designated shells you could pick up and shoot at enemies and knock down walls. So it was a means to get through the level, but then also it could be used as a useful tool. As we were going through the game, they pretty much stuck to a decent leveling pattern here. There are 5 different chapters. Each one follows the whole point of the game is that it's Patrick's birthday. SpongeBob wants to get him a great gift, and what better gift than an autographed picture from his 2 favorite superheroes, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. When SpongeBob goes to the 2 elderly at their retirement home, they ask SpongeBob to do a few chores for them in return for the autograph. So SpongeBob is game to help out these 2 superheroes get what they need. The first chapter sees SpongeBob making a peanut butter, tomato, and jelly sandwich for Mermaid Man. That's what he's asking for. So chapter 1 is all through Bikini Bottom. We go through Jellyfish Fields, Sandy's Tree Dome, Fish Hooks Park, and downtown Bikini Bottom. I gotta say, the Sandy's Tree Dome level was an absolute wonderful experience this time around. I think understood the mechanic with jumping up on these branches that shoot you up higher. When I was first playing this, I had such a difficulty learning how to play through this level, and this time I kind of just went with the flow, and it was just surprisingly nice time, and honestly made me appreciate the platforming a little bit better here. Chapter 2 takes us to the center of the Earth, with the carnivorous canyons, the thermal tunnels, the acrid air pockets, and the lava fields, all for a spa treatment for Barnacle Boy, who I think is telling you to get that stuff for Mermaid Man and alludes that it's definitely not for him. But yeah, all that spa treatment stuff. The next fetch quest for our favorite superhero team is for new costumes, and it sends SpongeBob back to the prehistoric times of Bikini Bottom. It's actually it's kind of funny that he goes to Plankton's time machine, which with that revelation puts into question on where this game takes place in the canon of SpongeBob SquarePants. If Plankton already has a time machine, is it possible that this game takes place after Sponge Out of Water? Certainly is. So SpongeBob goes to prehistoric times, the Precipice Canyon, the Desert Wasteland, Kelpozoic Jungle, and inside the whale to find our heroes a new costume, some new costume digs like slippers and whatnot. Finally, Barnacle Boy could really use a candy bar, and SpongeBob takes his adventuring all the way down to Rock Bottom. We get the levels Road to Rock Bottom, Lonely Souls, Graveyard, and then Last Stop. Now, the way that all of these levels are structured, it's that you basically get 3 levels completely, and the 4th level has a boss battle at the end of it. So you still get, a good portion of a level, but then there is a stop point. You're given a time to kind of read about the boss you're going to be facing, and the game does give you a decent hint or two about how to take out the boss. The boss battles that I haven't mentioned, though, at the end of level 4 of the Bikini Bottom level, you fight Mother Jellyfish. During Chapter 2, during the lava fields, you fight the Sub Shark, which is and it's also like alluded to and rumored that Plankton has created the Sub Shark, but it's not really there's nothing really past that other than just like one little mention. During the prehistoric times level, at the end of the whale, the whale has a parasitic worm inside of him that you must take care of. And then when you return to the Rock Bottom level, you actually fight the Flying Dutchman with clips used of Brian Doyle Murray. It was certainly a treat yet again. But man, the Flying Dutchman was actually one of the more annoying bosses to take on. It's not that he was hard to handle, but it was difficult to get a read on him at first, and he was just creating a bit more of a havoc for me. And then I eventually got onto his pattern, but I think it was just because I was more I was just more stoked to hear the high quality versions of Brian Doyle Murray's lines coming through the screen here. And finally, when SpongeBob returns with the candy bar from Rock Bottom, our superhero's TV has broken, with SpongeBob totally fine grabbing the tools to help repair the television, which brings us to Chapter 5, the industrial part of Bikini Bottom. Level 1 is the industrial version of the Jellyfish Fields. Level 2 is Man Ray's Lair. Level 3 is Oil Rig, and level 4 is the canning factory, in which the boss fight at the end has you up against the Iron Dogfish, which is the final boss of the game. Pretty crazy that, and I'm sure you thought the same thing with me there, that Man Ray's Lair is just the second level of the industrial chapter. I was not only confused about that, but that the fact that Man Ray was used as just a normal villain in the level. You would just see him a couple times throughout the level, and he was pretty easy to take care of. I mean, no offense, if I was restructuring this, Man Ray's Lair is the last level of this part, and Man Ray is the final boss of the entire game, holding the final tool to fix Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy's TV. Yeah, but to have Mermaid Man now, Man Ray is teased in the beginning of this game during the intro. They give up the fact that Man Ray is in the game. So you see that and you go, okay, we're going to face Man Ray at some point. But for him to just kind of show up as just some random level enemy, and then to have his lair be used as just this second part of the fight, I felt really underwhelmed by that usage of Man Ray. Maybe they just saw the one episode with him and said, he's a joke. You know, we can't have him as a final boss. But dead wrong here. Iron Dogfish, not a cool final boss. Man Ray, even if he was as easy as the Iron Dogfish to take care of, it still would have just made for a better ending, especially of the game SuperSponge, in which Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy are front and center of this game. They're on the cover there, so they're part of this plot. And just to see their number one villain relegated like this, I was a little underwhelmed by that. But the end sees SpongeBob fixing the television. Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy finally sign the picture for Patrick, and there's a wonderful little ending here with everybody celebrating Patrick's birthday. Now, throughout the game, beyond the items you're collecting in each level for the elderly, you are also collecting golden spatulas, and it's the best way to think of them as Sonic's rings in this game. You collect them. When you get hit by an enemy, you lose a bunch of these spatulas, in which you can you have like a second or two to recollect them as you would Sonic's rings. And if you collect enough throughout the game, you actually get a secret level. Yeah, each level there's a counter of up to 100. Now I hope to achieve this level on the next playthrough. Going through this, I had to be quick with time and whatnot, especially with how things have been going and all the plates I'm spinning over here. But you get a Six Flags inspired level known as Six Clams Adventureland. In those levels, it's an amusement park. You can ride through obstacles and collect 25 flower tokens. The tokens can be used to buy props for Patrick's birthday party at the end of the game. So this game was also released on the Game Boy Advance on November 8th, 2001 in North America, and in Europe at some point in 2001 as well. The Game Boy Advance version pretty much follows this game almost one-to-one, except for obviously the graphics are going to be down a little bit for the Game Boy Advance to be able to hold it. And also in the Game Boy Advance version, there's a dedicated health bar instead of the golden spatulas being used as such. The Game Boy Advance version also it was my first SpongeBob game that I think I owned. I think I owned that right before I was able to find Legend of the Lost Spatula at like a mom and pop retro game store. Especially at that age, it wasn't very often that I got video games, so They kind of came in these like rare pockets. The handheld ones were easier to come across and definitely easier to convince, parents or whatnot to get because they were a lot cheaper. But I think I owned the Super Sponge game first on the GBA before Legend of the Lost Spatula. And I don't remember if I ever had sat through and beaten the GBA version as a kid. I don't remember seeing the birthday, and that's the thing. But anyway, getting through this was an absolutely wonderful time. It wasn't that long of a game to beat. It was like an hour and a half, 2 hours long. Just a very simple playthrough. And honestly, even when the difficulty spiked up a little bit in certain levels with the amount of enemies that they were throwing at you, with the amount of invincibility you had once you got hit, you can honestly rush through a lot of annoying parts and just quickly get through this game. If you're a fan of the Sonic the Hedgehog games and understand that ring mechanic whatsoever, then you should know that even when you have one, you can easily burst through really bad parts of levels just to get through and then secure yourself at least one extra ring so that you can move on safely. I had to do that a few times here when things kind of became overwhelming, but even after the fact, I realized, if I just went a little slower, I would have been able to avoid some of those problems. But anyway, that was my time and experience with SpongeBob SquarePants Super Sponge. And if you're a fan of this game, I would love to know what your favorite experience of this game is. What are your memories of this game? Did you own it? Is this one you've never played? Would you be interested in trying it out? Because honestly, my recommendation here is to try this game. It is worth trying if you're a SpongeBob fan. The voice lines are wonderful. The presentation is great for the time. Like I said, for a licensed game, definitely you can tell they may have been a little bit rushed and crunched, or maybe the assets they had access to them. But the team at Climax here did a great job with the SpongeBob brand. And here I am, 20 years later. This is legitimately, we're almost at the 20th anniversary of the release of this game. Maybe we should do a live stream for that. I don't know. November 5th is coming right up. We'll see how things go out. I'm not going to make any promises right here, right now. But yeah, here we are, 20 years later. SpongeBob SquarePants Super Sponge. I can tell you, it holds up as a game. I mean, 1.6 million copies are out there in the wild. Maybe you played one as a kid. Maybe you should replay it. Let me know how it holds up. But anyway, that is this episode of the Squarecast. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for your time. If you're a part of the Ready crew, I appreciate you immensely. And if there's any way that you could see help this ship grow, anything is appreciated by the captain. We'll see you here next week when we start the first episode of season 3. I believe I'm going to be changing the release schedule as we're going. I know right at the end of this season things kind of became a bit scratchy. Things on my end got a bit crazy, but you'll never see things really move out of order, and definitely the This Week in Nickelodeon History episodes have been helping me kind of keep things together. So even if you don't listen to those religiously, I would definitely check out the last few episodes. I'm trying a new style over there to see how things go, and they've been helping me kind of keep things in track, because sometimes these delays, they happen and then they just get out of whack, and so thank goodness for those episodes. But yeah, I'm going probably with season 3 to going to be starting releasing episodes Monday mornings instead of the Fridays that I was doing through most of season 2. Let me know how you think about that. I'm going to be releasing probably next episode next Monday to kick it off. So I appreciate your time. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you here next week, mateys.